Well, greetings and salutations, everyone. I hope everyone is doing well today. Today, we are going to have a couple encounters involving law enforcement. And I'm doing that for a reason because tonight's second half is going to be an interview with former law enforcement and Department of Natural Resource Officer. Before we get into today's upload, though, a couple links. As you know, I rely on Patreon, PayPal, and my merch to help the channel to continue to grow and go. The links to Patreon and PayPal are in the description below. My merch is displayed directly under the video. Also, Dogman Frightening Encounters, Volume 1 through 3, the audiobook versions. They were written and researched by Tom Lyons, narrated and produced by me, Jeff Nadolny. Those audiobooks are available on Audible, Amazon, and iTunes, the links to which are also in the description as well. And finally, last but definitely not least, if you'd really like to help support this channel to continue to grow and go, simply subscribe, click the like button, and please leave a comment. It really does help. And guys, it definitely matters. And now, everyone, I have taken far too much of your time. Let's get on with today's Law Enforcement meets Dogman encounters, shall we? At the time of my encounter, I had just purchased a home in Phillipsburg, New Jersey, May 5th, 2017, off of Exit 3, on Route 78, 5 minutes from Pennsylvania. My job at the time was 90 minutes away in Hackensack, New Jersey. I worked for Home Depot at the time, 5 in the morning till 1:30 in the afternoon. One day, early in the morning, November of 2017, I was making my way to work, left my house at around 3:15 in the morning, making my way to Route 78, eastbound, which is about 5 minutes from my house. Once on 78, I was in the fast lane, traveling 70 to 75 miles an hour at the time. I was driving a 2010 Chrysler Sebring. So I was about 50 feet behind a pickup truck who suddenly came to a stop. So I slammed on my brakes, swerving into the middle lane just as I clipped this dog on the right side of my bumper. Never lost stride. It looked like a dark brown German Shepherd, 4 feet tall on all fours. I rolled my window down to see if it was okay. Then it turned around and stepped onto the pavement. The pickup truck already peeled out, so when it started to approach me, I took off. Next week, I got rid of the car and bought an SUV. A month and a half later, strange things started happening around my house, tapping on my kitchen window, light scratches on the siding. It's been going on every couple of days for about 2 weeks. Then one night I was up late at around 11 p.m. doing dishes. I had the feeling that I was being watched when I looked out the window and saw 2 amber-colored eyes leveled with me, looking at me standing outside of my window. I was so scared my legs gave out on me I couldn't even scream, let alone move. I did not own a gun at the time, so I started leaving my house with a 24-inch sword with jagged edges for sawing things. One day I was running late for work and it was raining heavily that morning. I didn't leave my house until about 3:45 and I had left my sword inside. I was rushing to my car as I felt this primal fear come over me, so I turned around. The same dog that I had hit a few months back was standing 20 yards from me. I was a few feet from my car, my sword in the house. I knew I wouldn't make it. I'm paralyzed with fear as it slowly approaches me and stops about 10 feet from me. As if I already wasn't terrified, it did something that would push my fear to the limits. It stood up on 2 legs, 8 feet tall, as I felt like a 5-year-old looking up at an adult. I'm a retired bodybuilder, and its muscles and definition would make Arnold Schwarzenegger in his prime look like the Nutty Professor. I was terrified and astonished at the same time, me being a retired bodybuilder and witnessing a perfect physique. I estimated its weight to be 600 to 650 pounds. He looked at me like, "Don't think I forgot what you did. I'm here for payback." Then he emitted a light growl that rumbled my chest. Then he showed me his razor-sharp teeth, and I soiled myself. Then I got about then it got about 5 feet and growled. I dropped to my knees and was hoping my death was quick. I looked to my left where the street was. I saw Patrick's vehicle making his rounds 150 feet away. Yes, I'm saved. And we never stopped. I'm crying now, and it's enjoying every moment of it. I was at its mercy, and it knew it. Patrick in the patrol vehicle made its way back and hit the Dogman with its spotlight. It looked over at the police and me. It gave me the impression I made my point, jumped on my roof and went through my back and took off in the direction of the woods, which is about a quarter of a mile. And one thing I forgot to mention, there are houses everywhere. The cop exited his vehicle with his gun drawn. "Are you okay?" "What was that? Do you need medical assistance?" "No, I don't know what that was." A month after I purchased my house, I installed surveillance cameras around my house. I didn't remember until a couple of days after my encounter. The whole encounter was recorded. However, agents of the government knew that and seized my DVR, but not until I backed up a copy of a flash drive. It's been 2 years since this encounter. I feel like I am still under surveillance. If you have any further questions, I will do my best to answer. Well, I did ask questions. Number one, when you said you felt like you were under surveillance, by who, the government or Dogman? And number two, how did the police officer act? The police officer ended up calling medical services for me. I was in a trance-like state. It took me 15 to 20 minutes to come out of. So he came to the hospital to question me after I regained my senses. He said when he first drove by, he saw two people in his peripheral. He also got further away. He planned his images in his head when he realized the size difference was not normal. That's why he turned around and headed back towards me. As he approached, he thought he was looking at a Sasquatch until he saw a tail and a muzzle. He said he did not have enough firepower with him to engage it. He was relieved that it decided to leave. His description of it, Hulk with a wolf's head. He reported what he saw to his superior, and a couple of days later, plainclothes agents showed up at my house, questioned me profusely, and demanded access to my DVR, and said what I saw was a bear that wandered into town, and it would be in my best interest not to tell anyone. I would see blacked out SUVs at the corner of my street for about a month, and every now and then they would drive by. What they don't realize is 4 hours prior to them showing back up, I backed up that footage. I saw my DVR to a USB drive. The government is well aware of these creatures, and they are tracking them because a few nights after the incident, a black helicopter flying over the woods for 2 days. Second, email, same subscriber. Hey Jeff, it's Jay. I gave you my encounter a few months ago from New Jersey. I had a strange run-in with government officials, and things happened like IRS debt and so on. They told me if I handed over what evidence I had, I would have my life back, which I did. These people can ruin your life with a click of a button. Jeff, they don't care about witnesses telling their stories because we are all monitored. They care about what can be proven. I actually had a run-in with the officer that was there that night, and we met up to discuss what happened that night and what he found out. How each police department or entity keeps a black book on cryptids that the higher-ups deal with. Also, ever since my encounter, I have bought a few guns. I own a Roddy as well. I also had another encounter in the daytime a month back while I was walking my Roddy. If you're interested. It wasn't the same one back then, as it was captured not too long after my first encounter. I believe it may have been. I'd like to mention that The first and second email from this subscriber were 6 to 7 months before Victor even came on the channel. This is that subscriber's third email. Hey, good evening, Jeff. I want to start by saying the information Victor gave you was spot on. I know it's hard to believe about such creatures, Dogman types, and stuff like that. But I have found more info, and I got it from a reliable source. First off, these things have not been around for 70 years. They've been around for as long as man. The ones your source put out was the time they were genetically engineered in the 50s, which they needed DNA from the original upright walking canine, or as the world knows them, Dogman. These creatures have been around since the Egyptian era, even documented in the Bible as such. The original Dogman had intellect and far exceeded our own till today. We still can't recreate pyramids. Anyway, if you are interested in this information, I will give it to you another time. Back to the encounter at hand. After my life was put in disarray, the powers that be gave me a final opportunity to get my life back, which I took under certain conditions. So, a few months after the whole ordeal with trying to piece my life back together, I purchased a few handguns and a 12 gauge. Also purchased a Roddy pup for my brother-in-law, 4 months at the time. She is now 9 months. I take her for a walk occasionally at the nature park. Me being from Jersey, the gun laws are very strict, which forbids you to open or conceal carry. To my fellow Americans, if you believe in the Second Amendment, do not, I repeat, do not move to New Jersey. You will regret it. Anyway, back to the story. I would walk my dog and keep protection in my car. So the last time, me and Kia, my Rottweiler, went to the nature park was around a month ago. Turned out it was a beautiful day around 5 p.m. And as we were heading back to the car about a quarter of a mile back, something felt off. Kia started to be on guard, her head darting back and forth as I realized that there was a possibility that we were being hunted by something. So I'm trying to stay calm to get us back to the car. As I did that, whatever was following us was no longer trying to be discreet. Kia started growling ferociously, and then the thing that was following us stepped out of the brush. Oh my God, it's the same one from the last time. No, wait, this one's a couple feet shorter. I'm 6'1", and it had me by 3 inches max. It looked like a juvenile. It was a good 25 to 30 feet away from us. Fear was overwhelming. I accepted the fact that I was going to die today, but not without a fight. It charged us. I braced for impact. It stopped short of 15 feet. It looked at me and Kia and smirked as if we weren't worth its time and leapt about 20 feet into the brush. I looked back at Kia and she was trembling. It took her a few minutes to snap out of it, and we headed back to the car. As I believe it was following us from the trees, we made it to the car without further incident and took off. A couple weeks later, I was at Walmart and I ran into an officer that was there a few years ago, that night of my first encounter. We talked at Fridays, and I told him what happened to me a few weeks ago, and he said, I have an encounter to share with you that changed my life and job functions forever. That is something you'd like to hear. I'll provide it to you. If not, that's okay. As well, this weekend, I'm going to try to buy some more firearms because sometimes these things follow you home. Hey Jeff, I just want to start off by saying great upload the other night. I still have nightmares after years after my encounter. My first one was the worst. Then the second recently, up close and personal, still can remember the stench of its breath like decaying meat and hot ass. Pardon my language. Enough rambling, back to the encounter. So the last email I sent you, I told you I ran into the officer who was there that night of the encounter. This is what happened after that. When everything was done, he went back to the police station to give his report, and he was pondering on what he saw, what to tell his supervisor, and would he lose his job. Report stated I was doing my nightly rounds. I passed people who seemed as if one was the aggressor. I turned my vehicle around and headed to the house. Turned my light on it. It took off before I could get a good look. It did look like a werewolf. Ended up having a psych evaluation and was convinced that it was a bear. Fast forward a little over a year, him and a handful of friends were camping at French Creek State Park in Pennsylvania. Him and two other friends were officers in another county and one firefighter. Hang out, fish, drink, do what friends do. Only going to be out there for a couple of nights. So they hiked to their camp location, pitched their tents, and fished. As it was getting later in the day, they started a fire, started talking and drinking. It was roughly 1 a.m. His friends turned in. He was still around the fire talking in the moonlight. Then he heard a roar. It sounded like the cross between a lion and a T-Rex. Two of his friends were passed out drunk. One awoke to the noise. The firefighter. What was that? Don't know. It sounds big and close. He heads to the tent and grabs his handgun. The only one out of the group to have one of them. Heavy footfalls start to approach them from the brush. Multiple angles as well. Whatever it is trying to flank us. Red and orange eye shine. They were surrounded, their friends in the tent, 20 feet from them and 10 feet from the brush. Something grabs their tent and drags it into the woods with the two in it with incredible speed. I fired 2 shots in the direction, praying to miss my friends and hit what was grabbing them. After shots fired, they came to and barreled out of the tent. What is going on? I don't know. I think we are being hunted. Hunted? By what? I don't know. I counted 8 eye shine. Do any of you have your pistols with you? No, we don't. Great. I don't have enough bullets for what's out there. Do we go to the car? No, it's too far. We'll never make it. One of the creatures would charge to draw fire. The others would attack, causing the friends to scatter, grabbing one of the friends, ripping his arm off, trying to finish him. I shot at it. First bullet missed its head. Second entered through its ear, leaving brain matter everywhere. They leave, but they are not gone. We had to stop the bleeding using a knife we used to gut fish. We stuck it in the fire, cauterized the wound. Sorry to stop it here, but the rest of what happened is a bit long, and my kids are home for 2 weeks. Should have the rest up to you by tomorrow. The next email and final email. Hey Jeff, sorry late, but here's the rest of the encounter. Also, I had to get a refresher on what happened after, so I wouldn't mix things up. So, after they were able to cauterize the wound, they were arguing if they should make a stand or hike back to their vehicles, which was a couple miles. The friend was in bad shape and they believed he may not make it the night. So 2 friends placed the injured in a sleeping bag and hauled him to the direction of where they believed the vehicle was. The officer with the only gun would cover them. Not too long after they were moving, they heard noises in the opposite side of them, in the brush, flanking them. One would advance and then fall back into the brush strategically, as if they were trying to draw a fire, so one can go in for the kill. They hunkered down where they were and decided to try to kill another one. They might consider the risk too high and back off. After the standoff lasted around 15 minutes, he was able to get a shot off, hitting one of the dogmen in the stomach, which caused it to yelp and take off. As the others were distracted and clearly visible, he took another shot, hitting another one in the neck. That one took off. Checking to see how many bullets he had left. None now. There was nothing keeping them at bay if they decided to attack. What he believes was the alpha had red eyes, staring at him with hatred as he pointed his empty pistol to the creature, and it let out a demonic roar that brought them to temporary paralysis, and it disappeared into the darkness from which it had come. So they continued to haul their friend to the car, notified the police, got to the hospital, and tried to figure out what to tell the authorities about what had attacked them. They all agreed that it was a bear. However, government agents took over the investigation and asked who killed the bear, and the one friend said I did. He got separated from his friends. Further interrogations, they contacted his police department's higher ups. The next few days, spoke with multiple officials, and was told that not many trained specialists survived that pack of upright walking canine. I'm impressed, and there's a position if you are interested, which he ended up taking. If any of the audience have any further questions about anything in this encounter, please notify me, Jeff. And today's second encounter. Jeffrey, I've been listening to your channel and two others for a couple years now. I also read everything online in regards to the Dogman and Sasquatch. I know a lot of people who have encountered a cryptid. They become obsessed with all cryptids. Not me, just the Dogman. Okay, a couple of things. I've never commented on your channel or the other two. I just listen. I want to share my encounter with you and only you. My only thing, no names, and you will see why. I'm giving you permission to use my encounter on your channel, so this is my encounter, which I truly believe I am blessed to be alive after. I'm a police officer and have been for 17 years in the city of Kansas, in a city in Kansas, with the population of about 18,000. We also have a large wildlife refuge about 15 minutes from the police station. Mind you, prior to what I have to share with you, I never believed, thought, or questioned anything that I could not see or touch. So, here's the encounter. It was a hot summer day, August 20th. I just got to the station and was starting my day. At around 5 p.m., we received a call from a frantic woman stating she had been out at the refuge with her dog, a mini collie, and a creature came out of the woods and grabbed her dog and vanished into the woods. I asked her to please stay out of the woods and go to her car, lock her doors, and I will be there in less than 10 minutes. She sobbingly agrees and hangs up. My brain starts thinking, great hot day, and the wackos are out. I was thinking some homeless or drug-addicted person, or worse, a male predator grabbed this woman's dog too. Get the woman into the woods and accost her, or even worse. It took me less than 10 minutes to arrive at the parking area and speak to the victim. She told me what had happened. She was visibly shaking, crying. She was, in my eyes, completely terrified. I asked her if she was physically hurt. She was not, and I told her to head home. I asked her if she needed a ride home. She refused and drove home. I watch her drive out of the parking area, and I glance around the surrounding woodline. At that one moment, I realized it was eerily silent. Nothing, no natural or mechanical noise. Jeffrey, at that point, I was on edge prior to becoming a police officer. I was in the armed forces. What branch doesn't matter. The point is, I've had years of training on protecting myself and others. I felt vulnerable, very vulnerable. I, for some reason, reached down and felt my sidearm almost like a scared child hugs their favorite stuffed animal. I proceed to walk to the trailhead and start walking to where the woman told me this attack happened. Mind you, I'm thinking still this is some weirdo drugged out or just mentally unstable person. It's just starting to get dark. Not black, but where shadows are cast and play tricks on your eyes. I walk about 400 feet into the woods. I am still on the trail, and I notice a dog collar with the lead still attached roughly 2 or 3 feet off the trail, and notice a fresh path. Now, it's not really a path or a trail, almost like an animal walked through and crushed the foliage down. I start to look around the rough opening of this path. I've been hunting a few times when I was younger, and my dad and uncle were fairly good hunters and trackers. I noticed the way the brush and scrub are broke and bent. Something large came through here.
I radio back and I give my location and may need backup. Be on standby. I felt at this point something was watching me. The silence was heavy, and I yelled out, "Police department, come out or I'm coming in." Nothing, not a sound. I unholster my HK-45 and announce I'm coming in. I walk in this path. I go about 200 feet and the pathway ends. The woods are thick like a wall. I start looking around and notice some blood spots and tufts of buff-colored hair. I hear brush snapping and an odd growl behind me and to my left in the woods. I slowly turn to the direction from where the noise came from. I walk about 10 feet back and start scanning the woods. My eyes catch some movement. What I saw was something that makes nightmares seem tame. I was looking at a dog on all fours. It was huge. Ground to shoulder was about 3.5 feet. Add the head at a good 4 feet. This thing was huge. It was a grayish black. When I say gray, I don't mean old. It was blended. It was a beautiful color. Wow, its head shape and face was like a wolf. Almost like that picture you use where you just see its face. Its eyes were a glowing like greenish yellow. This beast was just staring at me and hackles were up. I heard this low growl. It was almost continuous. I immediately took aim at this monster dog. Jeffrey, then it stood up. I don't know if I didn't hear it out of shock or there was no noise, but that popping sound people described did not happen. 1 minute it was on all fours and the next it was standing up. It happened in a flash. Jesus, I just had a flashback typing this. I went back a couple of days later and took measurements, so when I say it was 9 feet, it was, and maybe more, no less, sir. There, it was huge, and all muscle covered in fur. We stared at each other for a good minute, and this is exactly what this old boy looked like. A well-defined muscular body, and through the fur you could see its tense muscular frame. Its arms were odd, huge biceps but long forearms. They had muscle, but they were long, too long. Its shoulders were about 3 feet wide and narrowed as it went to the waist. The chest, I remember thinking, the pecs were strange but muscular, with an outward chest cavity, not like a human, but like a dog. The claws and hands were terrifying. Its hands were about 9 inches, with 3-inch claws, and at the end of the fingertips, the genitals were visible. It was a male, and proud male. I am not going to get into that detail. But everything was dangling. The legs were so muscular, the upper part resembled well-defined runner's leg, had inverted knee and muscular calves. The feet were the weirdest, like a human foot and dog paw combined. I can't explain it properly, but they too had claws at the end. We continued to stare at each other, and my HK is aimed dead center in its chest. The head was huge. Its eyes looked at me like it was calculating what to do next. In one motion it turned, dropped to all fours, and looked back at me. Growled a god-awful noise, kind of a snapping its mouth, and that's when I saw its fangs, a yellowish row of pointed teeth. Turned its head and ran out of sight. It just disappeared into the woods. I quickly and carefully made my way out of the woods and back to my patrol car. I sat there for a good while and reported to the station. I could not locate the suspect or missing dog. I drove back to the station in a daze, not believing what I had just seen. I wrote my report and stated the dog must have been stolen by an unidentified suspect and informed the woman that I didn't find her dog or suspect. She was crying and telling me it was not a person, it was a monster, and hung up. I went home and told my wife what had happened. She was not skeptical of my encounter, but we both agreed to tell no one. When I said I went back and took measurements, it was a couple days later, my day off, and armed with my service pistol, I went back with that path. It was a very nice day and atmosphere was normal. I walked to where the Dogman was standing and took out my tape measure and measured the trees, and it was no less than 9 feet. I did notice some remains of a torn up animal, but it was unrecognizable. Since that day, I've been researching, like I said, everything I can find that's related to the Dogman. I've tried to contact the woman and her family, but apparently she moved about 7 months after this happened. I don't know if she moved because of the incident, but I can only assume. I was lucky. I thank the Lord every day, but I am very careful when I go on calls near that refuge or woods now. Thank you for your channel and your work. Be safe, everyone.
I hope you all enjoyed today's upload as much as I enjoyed sharing it with you. Like I said in the beginning, I wanted to kind of warm you guys up with law enforcement experiences with these creatures, because tonight's second half is going to be an interview with a former sheriff and retired Department of Natural Resource officer. So I want to thank you all for tuning in today, and all your support really does mean the world to me. Thank you for that. May the Great Spirit watch out for all of us, and may He guide us down that path that we call life. Stay safe, everyone.